So how's it going, my Comic Chat Army? We're here today with will you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are in the book.
Oh, I thought
No,
I
you're
was
fine.
waiting for you to say it. My name is Adrian Asia Petty. I am director and writer and a bunch of other stuff at Jericho Projects. We've been doing our books for somewhere in the neighborhood of 14 years. Technically longer than that, but we had a reboot. And we currently have a book out that just came out maybe a month ago or so, but we have 5 titles out and 8 books.
Nice.
And me, myself, as a writer, I have primarily worked with Jericho Projects. I've done a book with Red Giant Entertainment, or I should say a story, and contributed to one of their anthologies. I have also been published under Marcosia Enterprises. Those guys are based in London. Really good company. But primarily I stick with my own label of Jericho Projects.
Are you based out of the United States?
Yes, currently I am in Texas. We were in Georgia, came here, and by next month, we will probably be in Florida.
Nice.
So,
Are you moving here to Florida?
Moving. Yeah, we're looking to go to Jacksonville.
Nice. I've never been to Jacksonville. Drove through it. I heard it's nice. I'm down at the bottom, like near Miami.
Oh, really?
Yeah, near Tampa and stuff.
Oh, okay. And you said you're in Florida?
Yep. Fort Myers, Florida.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So, are you coming to any Florida Comic Cons next month or Texas Comic Cons?
Oh, when I say I'm going to Florida, I mean we're moving to Florida, actually picking up and gonna live there. But when we do get there, yeah, the plan is definitely to go to some Comic Cons. Maybe not right away. We got to get settled and situated. Looking for, because years ago I had been to MegaCon a few times in Orlando. It's a really good show, and I'd like to get back there.
Okay. We've got some really awesome creators here in Florida that you should get together with and brainstorm. Like, I don't think I've ever seen a state that has so many creators in it. Like, you can throw a rock and hit at least 3 here in Florida. So where do you draw inspiration from?
Where don't I draw inspiration from? Basically anywhere. I'll give you an example here. It'll help. Our very first book, Miss Johnny, is about a woman who is a little bit overweight, having a bad time in her life, and one day her child is kidnapped, and she's on a mission to locate her missing child. Now, to answer your question, I got inspiration for this book while watching an episode of Jerry Springer. Yeah, I get that. I get that a lot. The storyline there in that particular instance was a woman who had her child taken from her by a pimp. And I started thinking, what if that was a real instance where a mother did have her child kidnapped, and how would she react to that? And what would she go through to get her child back? And I've always been a fan of characters that don't have superpowers, even though I obviously have characters that do. and I'll tell you all about those. But Miss Johnny is just her. She goes on this based off of one tip from her oldest son, her only son. And she has no superpowers. She gets robbed, so she's got no money. She's moved from one state to another, and based off of that tip, and what is she going to do? No friends, nothing. So, because one of the things that I've always been taught when you're writing is you've got to strip your characters down to literal, you got to put them through hell, because then you find out what they're really made of. And how bad do they really want to achieve whatever their goal is or their objective is that they want. And that's where I got the inspiration from Miss Johnny. And that is a 4-part story. And yeah, I got all 4 of them done. 4-part story arc. And the way that I write in 4-part story arcs is based off the old school Marvel limited series technique of doing 4 issues of one book, of one title. And that's what I copied here. And it allows me enough to kind of flesh them out and give you an introduction of who they are and how they operate and how they think.
So since you have so many different characters, is this, I guess, considered a shared universe?
It is.
Okay.
I haven't tied everything together yet, but the answer to your question is yes. Miss Johnny has a tie-in to the next title I had, Avoria. And it's not going to be obvious right away. Now, Avoria, to give you to answer that initial question about inspiration, this is an angelic character that was inspired by my wife. And it's basically about a woman who dies and comes back to life as an angel. Now, the way that I approached Avoria, unlike your typical comic book now that's illustrated, colored, word balloons, if some of y'all remember the books that were out in the 70s in a style called fumetti, which was popular primarily in Europe. Fumetti is a photographic manner of telling your stories. So Avoria is all photographs.
Like real pictures?
Real pictures, real people in real situations. And I put myself in as an actor because I was broke and couldn't afford anyone else.
Do you kickstart your books or do you fund them yourself?
All self-funded. I've never ran a Kickstarter.
Wow. Have you ever thought about running a Kickstarter?
I've thought about it, but it's not really me.
Okay.
And if that's what people like, if that's how they get their funding and such, that's hey, do whatever works for you. You know, but as for me, I prefer to self-fund. I mean, I'm not saying I won't ever do a crowdfunding, but for me and right now, I prefer to do all of my stuff self-funded.
All right. Are you in comic shops?
I have been in comic shops. I had a deal with a distributor for my very first title that was done 2000, 2001, 2002. But since then, yeah, I've been doing this a while.
Yeah.
Yeah. But right now, no, I'm primarily online.
Okay.
And, the next book that's in this shared universe is Who is Darius Key? And once again, well, it's done in a different format than the typical illustration. Now, Darius Key is a complete off-take of anything else. He's a character who is troubled because he is living a life where he's stocking shelves and he's broke and he's got this broke down vehicle and he's not very popular, but he's got a secret nobody knows about. Not well, only one person knows about. Darius Key is the only demon hunter left on the planet. And he's been doing it for around 2,000 years. And the reason that he's been doing it is because Darius Key was resurrected from the dead by God, as he was a person who betrayed his friend for 30 pieces of silver. God is giving him a second chance to redeem his sins, if you will, and to make right what's wrong, what he did wrong. And Darius Key is done in what I call a photo novels style, which is not fumetti, but it is done in photography, but it's done in a prose style where you basically read it like a book. And once again, use me. I'm broke, remember? And I got this lovely lady here. Her name's Keisha. And she had did some work back in the day on a TV show called South Beach Tow. It was a reality show. And I got her to work with me to play a character called Frida Eves. And there's another person in here. This character is Maxwell Lightfoot, and you'll hear more about him later on. But Darius Key thinks he's about to die, and he needs someone to take his place. And so Maxwell is the next guy up in line that Darius is going to train to take his place. And Frida has been helping Darius to do what he does, and Maxwell is learning.
So with your comics, can they start anywhere? Like, can they pick up any series that they want and start reading? You don't have to go. All right, cool.
Each title is, I mean, while it is a shared universe, I intentionally make each title so where it can be self-contained in terms of a self-contained storyline. So you don't have to know, okay, well, what's going on here in order to understand what's happening here. You don't have to do that.
Gotcha.
Each story arc is something you can read individually.
All right. And do you have a website where they can pick all these books up?
Yes. Website is jerichoprojects.com. Do I have that up here? I don't know.
Blurred out, or you got like the grass?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll put it down in the description.
Okay. Or you can just go to any social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at Jericho Projects, which is probably simpler.
They can buy it directly.
Yeah, there's a direct. Yes, sir. There is a direct link on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter for and it's at Jericho Projects. Go there. There's a direct link. You can get all my books there. Everything.
All right. What advice would you give to people out there that want to make their comic book for the first time?
The very first thing that comes to mind is, if you think you need $1,000, save $2,000. Because it's always going to be more money than you think it is. Number 2, be patient and be focused, because people can and will drop off, because there's a lot of work, there's a lot of effort, a lot of time that you need to invest into it. Put something out there that people want to read. Now, that's pretty broad and pretty vague, because different people have different tastes. But I think a better way of saying that is that be professional and be intriguing in terms of what you do. And the biggest thing is that with any kind of business that has to deal with the arts, it's 10% creative, 90% business. Know the business, know how to market it, because when you get out there and you're putting your stuff out, nobody knows who you are and nobody cares who you are. And that's one of the things. And in fact, I'll tell you a story, since I actually brought that up. I told you I've been doing this for a while, and my first book was out in 2000, 2001. And I had put out 3 books, which I don't market now, by the way. And the reason is that the last show I did with that first title, I met someone, Brian Polito. He was there. And for some of y'all who may not know, he's a creator of Lady Death. And I was a big fan of his. And I asked him for some advice about the marketing and business and animation. He looked at my books, then he looked at me, and then he said, "Adrian, there are 2 chairs over there. Sit down." And I'm thinking, fuck. And for about 45 minutes, he pretty much told me everything I was doing wrong. And he told me things he did wrong, because at that time he had lost control of his own property, which is what goes back to another thing. Know the business, because this is a business. It isn't just drawing pretty pictures and writing words like fanboys and spandex and women with tits and ass and everything. No, it's a business. Understand it, because that is key.
Yep.
And the last thing he said to me, and this was in 2004, was take a break for a good year, because I don't want to see you again selling the same stuff. And okay, oh, there's another thing. Don't have too big of an ego, because somebody will shoot it down.
Oh yeah.
And my ego got shot. But when I had time to sit and reflect on it and think about it, it wasn't about my ego, because he was telling the truth. That material was really subpar that I was doing. It really wasn't that good. And once I admitted that, I didn't take a year off. I actually took 4 years off. And that's when I came back with Miss Johnny. And found that I had made a connection, at least in the comic circuit line, because that's how I was marketing primarily, is in the comic circuit line. And people were reading that and were like, "Oh, this is all right." And I'm like, "Well, thank you." So,
Right.
yeah. What were you gonna say?
No, I was just saying that's all the time we got for today. 20 minutes goes by quick. When you get to Florida, where will we know where you're going to pop up at? Where would be the best place to get that information? Your social medias?
My social media will be the best place. Yeah,
Okay.
at Jericho Projects.
All right.
And do I have time to say one more thing real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. 2 more books. Appalachian Assassin. This is a 100-page graphic novel. This is done in a classic style, okay? And this is about a girl who's from the Appalachian Mountains in Tennessee, a Tennessee holler, short for hollow. For those of y'all that
Yeah.
don't know, they call it a holler though. And she's been abused, she's been mistreated, she is failing in school, she has an incurable disease. So the storyline is boy meets girl, Jesse English. Boy saves girl from dying because the girl dies. Boy marries girl, and boy turns girl into an assassin. That's your basic story here.
I like it.
And this one was a labor of love here. It took me about 3 years to get the script the way I wanted it, and it took me about 2 years of actual production to get it done. And but yeah, this was fun, and this was a real experience, and this really good experience, and this is the one I did through Mercosia.
Did you draw it yourself, or did you get someone to draw it for you?
I got an artist, artist to do the pencils and the ink, Carl M. Bazaldo, and unfortunately he has passed.
I'm sorry.
And I got a friend of mine, Sherry Hunt. She did the colors, and she is absolutely incredible. She's a longtime friend of mine. And this one, this is another thing since we're talking about advice. This is the first book I ever did with an editor. And editors are key.
Mm-hmm.
You need a second set of eyes to look at your work and say, Adrian, this isn't working. Fix it, or the flow isn't right, or something. Because when you're a writer, everything you write is perfect, and it's your baby, and you don't want somebody telling you something bad about your baby. But once again, the ego's got to be put to the side. And one more book. This is the latest one, Decadence and Avoria. And remember back with Darius Key?
Yep.
I told you about Maxwell Lightfoot. Decadence and Avoria is basically the second part of Who is Darius Key.
Nice.
Okay, and it still kind of stands alone as a standalone book. You can still understand it. And once again, it's done in a photo novel format. And this is what happens to that character after he's received his training from Darius Key. And he goes out on his own, and he has to deal with his new mission. And he's got his own set of enemies now that he's got to deal with. And and a lot of his big issues are with himself because he's kind of arrogant. He's been kind of spoiled. and he thinks the world owes him something, and he finds out very quickly that's not the case.
All right. Is there, do you have any shout outs or anything you want to say really quick before we go?
Well, first, shout out to you. Thank you very much for having me on the show. I appreciate that. Friend of mine, Chuck Pinnell, who did the editing.
Hey, he's popping up everywhere. We know Chuck Pinnell.
Yeah,
well, Chuck. Yeah.
Yeah, Chuck. He's really cool, and I'm gonna put in a shameless plug here. Chuck and I are working on my next book. He's editing that. He's got the script in his hand. The follow up to Decadence and Evoria. He's very talented, very busy too.
Mm-hmm.
And the crew that worked on Decadence and Evoria, Nicole Damon and Eric Piero, Michelle Garcia, Sofia Flores, Taylor Ladica, Casey Pierce. She's a really talented editor. Joe Mondin. And I got in contact with a photo manipulator all the way over in Nepal. It's a young guy who's ultra talented. His name is Bajaya. And he did some of the stuff like right here that I cannot do. He is just mad skills there.
Nice.
Could not get and this is Decadence and Evoria. Yeah, I could not have done the book without him. And of course, my wife, Stacy.
All right. Well, thank you for taking the time to come talk with us today.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been fun.
What? You mean you haven't subscribed to Comicchatauthority? Oh, come on. Subscribe already. What are you waiting for? It's no big deal. Like, man, don't forget to tell him to hit that like button. Yeah, that too. Just subscribe.